Yo, 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 drill, drill. I'll get into that, why I say that. But my name's Austin. This is Garrett. We're going to be
What's up?
talking about AI today and how we use it, what we think is cool about it, because we're living in an AI world and it's good to know about this stuff. Garrett, anything to add before we hop into it?
Yeah, no, I'm bringing a lot of energy today, so I might want to tone it down.
Oh, man. I thought you were going to leave those on the whole time. I was saying the guy,
It looks a little gimmicky, but I like it for the thumbnail.
you're always thinking ahead, always thinking ahead. Dang. So, uh, thumbnails basically are why people actually watch videos. Seriously, Mr. Beast said the thumbnail is the most important thing when it comes to a video to begin with. Obviously, content matters. But, dude, let's jump in right away. When did you start first using AI platforms like ChatGPT, Claude, and Gemini?
Yeah, so this was like winter of 22. Yeah, winter of 22 going into 23. I was teaching at the Air Force Academy, and I was in the computer sciences department. So we got a lot of computer whiz folks that are there keeping tabs on stuff. And guy's platform, ChatGPT, was kind of rolling. I think it was 2 at the point. It was kind of rolling. And then right when 4.0 or 4.0, maybe it was a 3,
Maybe
3.5.
3.0. I think it was
Yeah,
3.0.
I think 3 or 3.5 came out. We're in winter time, so this is after classes and finals had ended, and we're looking at the spring. It was our deputy course director for Computer Science 110, Intro to Comp Sci 110, and said, "Hey, I just threw all of the programming sets into ChatGPT, and it solved all of them. What do you think we should do about that?" And everyone was like, "What?" And then pretty quickly over the next 4 weeks that we had to go between the fall and the spring semester, had to come up with policy. The entire dean of faculty staff had to think about, how are you allowed to use it? How are you not allowed to use it? How are we going to figure it out? And so there was just a lot of stuff floating around. People really didn't know kind of like what the students were going to do in React, but the students did what they do, which is they found the least path of resistance, the easiest path, and a lot of them ended up using it to maybe their detriment. And we can get into that later about kind of like what I think about using and not using it. It was pretty cool at the time. I mean, it can solve basic programming stuff back in that era. It's gotten a lot better now in terms of its ability to program. Coding in general is really good for these large language models because it is structured. It's a language of sorts, right? It's not language that you and I speak, but these models are really good as a next word or next token predictor at figuring out patterns. And code is something that's pretty structured in a way that you can solve some really interesting problems with it. And it was good back then. It was good enough to solve those problems, and it's getting even better.
So you started using it back in 2022, winter of 2022. And what was interesting was, I'm curious, were people freaking out, like in the comp sci department, like, oh my God, like, what are we going to do? Or
we
like,
were we were freaking out less than some of the other departments. Comp sci was more like maybe early adopters, and like two things. One is, this is cool technology. It's great. It's advancing. We're kind of talking about, we're coming out of an AI winter. Are we still in an AI winter? Meaning there's these hype cycles in the past decades of computer programs that can kind of act like humans or perform work like humans. Is this going to be able to do it? And some people were pretty skeptical. Some people were really bullish. Overall, we were thinking this is a great tool to help students that can learn programming faster. Other departments, like English department, were thinking, oh no, it can just write a paper that is not necessarily good at that point, but almost indistinguishable from what they would have done anyways. And so now you have somebody, instead of spending 2 weeks to write a paper, they're going to write it in 30 minutes or less.
right. I think that's so interesting. Like in the beginning is like the comp sci. I figured the comp sci department was like, oh crap, like kids are just going to use this to write their code, and we're pissed off about it. Like,
More yes and no. I think it has to do a little bit with there was a lot of philosophical discussion about what is learning and how do you assess learning. And in some of the courses, they switched to things like coding interviews. So you write a project, you write something, and then they would sit you down and say, all right, explain this piece of code. And essentially, if you didn't really know what it was doing, then you hadn't demonstrated that you learned effectively. And so you get a worse grade if you couldn't explain it right. And so that was a really easy way to kind of adjust in the comp sci world. Not everything that we did. There's also some pattern recognition stuff that we were doing at that stage of thinking, like trying to identify people who were using AI to kind of limit, bad use of it.
Mm-hmm.
In the other departments, at the time, I don't know if they really understood kind of like the actual underlying technology. So like the linear algebra, kind of like encoding math that was powering the next word predictor and kind of like what it could do and what it couldn't do. And so I think there was a lot of misinformation or fear-based stuff in the background of this. So honestly, that was probably part of it. And I think it still exists to this day, is the people who understand more of the underlying technology maybe have a more grounded sense of what's possible. And there's also people who are in these frontier AI labs that their marketing hype cycles are, this is the model that's going to do it. It's going to kill us all. You're thinking about like Mythos, that release. It's like, hey guys, this is so dangerous that we can't release it to everyone. We're just going to release it to our 10 best friends, these major corporations, and we're going to use it and make the internet and make everything safe, and then you can use it. And then 3 weeks later, it was like, oh no, you can use it.
Yeah.
Now they probably did put in a lot
fast.
more controls and
Right.
kind of like harnesses and stuff like that in the background.
Mm-hmm.
But like, honestly, it's one of those things that the people closer to the technology, I think, have a better sense of kind of like what's possible, what's not possible, what you should use it for, and what you shouldn't use it for. And the further away you are, the less that you understand about underlying kind of like what these things are and what they can do.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's probably more room for people to misuse the technology. But that's the same across all different kind of types of technology.
For sure. And like you said, that last comment is like, as technology gets used more and more, like the guardrails and all those things start to become more set in place and stuff. But like, I was curious because I know, it's funny. Some people weren't early adopters of the technology. Obviously, when you're working in a college, people are like, all right, it's probably going to be on the forefront of people's brains and using it to help them get work done and stuff like that. So that's why I was curious how you guys were using it at the Air Force Academy.
Yeah.
And I still remember when it came out and I started using ChatGPT. I was at my parents' house at the time because I went back home to help my dad out with his football team. And I was like, you guys don't understand this. This thing is literally like writing like blog posts and coming up with different, thoughts and theories and stuff. And they were like, they had no idea what it was and didn't really care about it at the time. And then it was funny because like a year later, then my mom's like, I'm using ChatGPT to do these things, right? Like it just took people a long time. So right now, what platforms are you using and how are you using them? Just curious.
So I day-to-day use Claude. So I use Claude mostly in the web browser, but I'm starting to transition to the Claude desktop app because that's got Cowork, which is basically an overlay of your file structure. I'm in the process of building out like a personal operating system. So that's like
Can you give an
a
example?
project folder. Yeah. So basically for me, personal operating system is what are the different kind of like agents that I could build out to run my life on a day-to-day basis. So like email triage is like a classic one, or, appointment mapping. So you can get like a daily brief.
When you say email triage, can you dig in that a little more? Like say,
yeah. So just like
give an
read your
example.
so imagine if you had an executive assistant that could read your emails and then figure out which ones were important, which ones were not important, which ones, need your attention. I'm not at the point now, and I don't know if I will get to the point of having it draft responses. There's some, for me personally, I think that writing is becoming more important. So I'm actually taking a copywriting course, Sam Parr's copywriting course as a starter point, but I know I need to get better at that in order to develop my own voice. Because I think as more AI gets out there, people complain about slop and whatnot, and they don't want to, if you're writing to a person, if it's important enough for you to respond from a relationship perspective, it probably should come from me. And at this point, I haven't trained it on my voice or anything like that. So that is my current build out. So using Claude Cowork, Claude Code to kind of build out some, just some play around apps just to see the functionality. I'm actually in a program with Palantir as well called the American Tech Fellowship. So that's I don't know, it's a 12-week course, maybe part-time, to learn the Palantir system. So that's kind of their Foundry is their main hub software that connects everything together. And then Ontology is their backbone to everything. So it's kind of
when did you start that?
World mapping. That was 2 weeks ago. Started that.
And so it's basically like a class. It's like a class that you're just learning their platform.
Their whole system. Yeah. And so
why are you doing that?
Part of the reason I'm doing that is originally the way I applied to it when I didn't have a job, and a friend of mine went through the program earlier this year, and he was like, hey, you do this thing, and it's a long-term kind of like interview process for Palantir and their partners that, if you want to go work for one of their, somebody in their partner network to implement this, their system. And so you kind of come, ready to go. And then I got a job and I was like, do I want to do this thing? And a couple of other friends, one who worked at Palantir and one who went to the program, he said, hey, the job thing is kind of secondary. Yes, of course, they're always looking for good talent, but realistically, this is a front row seat to best in class AI implementation. Yeah. So I really think it's just cool to see, how do they think about AI? Is this thing under the hood? Is it really cool? And it is very cool. I think that
that's awesome.
Foundry and the way that they do the integrations, it's super plug and play. You can do really in-depth coding, but you can also do no code. They classify everyone that is on their platform as like a builder because, people have varying level of skills. And so you can take all the stuff that's in your workflow, in your organization, and just plug it in as it stands. You don't have to write from scratch. So it's pretty powerful and it's cool. So I'm only a couple weeks in, and I have, near the end of this, I have to create a project of something, and that's kind of my exit ticket is some project.
That's cool. I think that's amazing. I've been following Palantir since like 2021 when they went public, and like trying to understand more of like data tells you everything, and they've been around for like 20 something years, right? Like a long time. And so they are very much like data driven decision making and building these projects and platforms. And I think it's really cool. So I'm super interested. I'm probably going to get more information on that because one, I would want to know, like, since you applied to that, did you have to go like an interview process or write a paper or something like that? And like, they just accepted you, and does it cost money, or is it something like you?
So it's free and you're not getting paid. So that's kind of like a course, like you said. For this program is specifically for veterans. So it's the American Tech Fellowship for veterans. I applied by submitting an essay and responding to some questions and my resume. And then the second round is a video interview where basically you film yourself talking about what would you do if you could kind of do anything. And the analogy they use is like the Iron Man suit upgrade. So, when Tony Stark puts on the Iron Man suit, it's like he goes from a normal human being to somebody who can simultaneously target, 20 different incoming enemies and launch missiles. It's this superhero upgrade.
Yeah.
And so I described something from my past in the command and control world and the Air Operations Center.
Can you talk about it?
Yeah. I mean, like the overall process for generating the air tasking order is really slow. It takes 72 hours at a minimum for the whole organization to generate a document, which is called the air tasking order. And that's the thing that you send out to all the units in the region to know what missions are you going to fly. And the planning process is slow, in part because there's just a system of people, an organization that has been built up to solve this. That system was designed back when you're using,
Stone Age.
grease pens. Yeah. Well, I mean, because, if you need a lot of people to look at things and review and go over, I'm not saying that you should cut humans out of the loop. That was my proposal was you could have a really small team of people, each with a span of control of like the strategy phase and the planning phase, basically one person per division to be able to manage that entire process in a matter of minutes rather than in days.
72 hours.
And then you have this, it's just a different operating concept. I think that's what the cool thing that I'm thinking of with the unlock for AI is different ways of doing business. A buddy of mine is starting up a cybersecurity company, and he was describing to me a couple things. One is you do a hot wash at the end of the week. That's kind of like this, you post-mortem, you look back over the course of the week and you're like, hey, what didn't go well? What should we be doing? And then they would write up these tickets and then submit them for review to the CTO. And the CTO is like, why am I receiving these tickets to fix? The old way of business is kind of like, okay, that's process improvement over time and it's slow. And my buddy Amit is like, well, what we would just do is we turn the hot wash into a building session. And so if you have a problem, we're just going to sit there right now and we're going to fix that thing. And we're not going to do that thing the same way next week. And so their iteration and the way that they do business is different. Another concept is like, you're not going to need it, is this kind of adage in computer programming is you have all these features and you're like, oh, I have a button feature, I could, have this thing in Spanish. I could, add in another, module that allows different functionality. And most of the time, what you want to do is hyper focus on the features that you have.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
build those out so that they're better and better.
Yeah, but you're not gonna need it. Implies a scarcity of resources, which is the programmer's time.
Mm-hmm.
Now you could just delegate that and have all those features be built. Now you still will need good product principles to prune and figure out kind of what your high use features are, but it actually allows you to kind of like test things faster.
Throw a lot more spaghetti at the wall.
Yeah, so I'm not saying it necessarily changes everything, but those are two that come to mind about just different ways of doing business.
Very cool. No, so the air tasking order and then the hot wash, those are great examples of trying to improve processes with AI. And then it's very cool. Like, you're a learner, and so you're trying to learn more at Palantir. I think that's really cool. I'm going to pick your brain at some point about that process, maybe in the next 3 months after we're done with that, to see what you thought about it. I tried doing an AI course through Google with somebody, I can't remember. And I just kind of fell off. It wasn't something I was like taking notes and stuff like that. And I kind of got to a point where I understood it, but I was like, man, like this is very, very much in the weeds. I was like algorithms and stuff like that, just like regression to the mean, that type of thing. Like I can't remember all the things that I learned, but like, I was like, man, this is something that I can't directly apply to what I'm doing right now. So it kind of fell off by the wayside. Like I was like, I need to focus on building this company from a sales standpoint or like getting customers and stuff. So I'm always interested in the AI stuff.
Yeah. No, I guess I'm thinking about like, how have you applied it? Because how do you use it? How have you applied it? Because I know learning is one thing. I find that the same way is if I'm not turning around, learning is behavior change. If I'm not trying to take this stuff and apply it, then it just doesn't work, or these like practice problems doesn't stick. So I'm curious, like, how are you using it? How have you tried to apply it?
So the main way that I'm using AI right now is it helps me write emails back to people. Like I always read through it and I always try to edit it so that it comes from me, right? I use it to basically create some type of, from an email standpoint, a block of paragraphs or sentences. Then I go, okay, now I can work on that because I'm just not very good at writing. And I think that's why you're doing the same thing. You're writing with the copywriting class, but it helps me just like send that out immediately, because as long as it's something where I read it, I agree with what they're saying what they came up with, and then I can send it off. That makes my life so much faster and easier. And then also, I'll be honest, like it helps me write blog posts for my website, because what I've learned is I have a lot of good information, but in order for me to like sit down and write all that out via like long paragraphs or text or using something like that, I'll give you an example. So yesterday I wrote a blog post on grip strength. Okay. That would have taken me probably an entire day to write, but it probably took me an hour to put everything together on my website, because it made a rough draft of all the information that I put in there. I read through it and I was like, this is very good. All right. I made some edits here and there, But then I was able to work on the SEO portion of it. And then I was also able to put a good video in there. And I was also able to put a good, forward facing thumbnail. And so those things, would taken me probably 4, 5, 6 hours to do, right, originally. But now that AI can actually write what I, am trying to put into words, and then I can work on like the SEO portion and the aesthetic portion that's like, this looks better, right?
Yeah.
So that's been helpful for me.
Yeah.
That's just like an example.
No, that makes sense. I think what you're highlighting is that the judgment piece, the pieces that have high taste that are hard to describe, like find me a rock, what's a good thumbnail? Now there are good models for it, but you have a vision in your head and trying to communicate that the AI, it's not like it's not good at doing it. Some people would say it's not. I would say that there's a difference between trying to get it to write this blog post where you say, here are the main points, and it can go connect the dots and it can write it in a tone and, make it readable. The high value things that require judgment and taste, you are not outsourcing, and you're spending more of your time on those things that are actually going to drive page views and make it just better all around.
Mm-hmm. And to your point, on that same note, my brother-in-law, we were talking back in November, and he was asking me like, how are you using AI? And I told him, and he was like, why aren't you using AI for your sales? And I was like, well, I do all outbound stuff, right? And little did I know he was actually working on like a sales project with somebody else. So that's why he was asking me, but I'll get into that in a second of like one of the cool projects that I'm thinking about. But he was like, if you could use AI to do outbound sales, that'd be great. I don't think it's there yet because I've heard some outbound calls from AI, and I'm just like, it just sounds way too.
When you say like it's
robotic.
It's voice generated, so it's doing the whole call.
Yes, I've heard some outbound voice calls from AI customer sales reps, right? And it just doesn't sound very authentic. I mean, inbound, that's a different story. Now, I still feel like outbound, I need to do sales calls. Hopefully one day, maybe I can get an AI to do that. But one thing I was going to talk about of like a cool project that actually he showed me 2 weekends ago was an inbound sales customer rep, AI customer rep. And if you have very specific parameters in your business of like certain products that you offer, and you can tell the AI like, hey, this is how much it costs, this is how long it'll take, this is what we can do. It's very, very good. And he actually did a demo where literally on their sales page, you click, the AI button and it says, how can I help you? And then you say, hey, I want to get a car wrap.
Voice to voice?
Voice to voice. Yeah. It's still very much in like they're beta testing it and using it at different places. But he's like, I want to get a car wrap, for my Z71 pickup truck. How much is that going to cost me? And literally the AI goes, well, I need to ask you a few more questions, but then I can give you a price and tell you when you can get it in, blah, blah, blah. It was very, very good. I was super impressed how good this inbound AI was. So I don't know if you've seen any projects like that.
No, I took a couple sales classes at HBS this past spring, and we had a lot of conversations about how AI is reshaping the sales organizations as just an example of how organizations are changing. And the kind of the people that came in as the guests, the protagonists, are thinking about ways in which you can get your sales reps more focused on the human connection piece, because that's still important in the sales world. Like you talk about that outbound, establishing rapport. If your first foot forward to somebody that you're calling is a bot, what do they think about you? So I think, sure, the technology can advance, but I think there's probably going to be some pushback. Not all customers or people that are receiving calls would be open to that, I don't think, and maybe never. Yeah. I'm not saying that it won't work. I'm just saying, for all businesses, it doesn't really seem applicable. But you said for the inbound side, it's a really great sales lead qualification system. Totally. So, you receive this and I do all this stuff. It sets up the quote, it sets up all the information, and then boom, connect with a person, and that person has all the context they need to close the sale. And now think about one sales rep that has this inbound agent that's working on their behalf. They're teed up with just super qualified leads, and then they can go and close the sales. Mm-hmm. I'm curious, like, how is it specifically he's got the product for, like an example, this car wrapping business, or is it specifically for this business that they built this capability for?
So,
does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, is it a company that does this like kind of for all different organizations, or is it just for this car?
So
company?
they're vertical, and it's smart. I think he's going straight. He's going into the vertical of car maintenance / wraps / So that's where I think he has a very good hold on that market. They are going to basically build this out in a bunch of different auto businesses that can get this inbound, because it's a niche market. It's something where not a lot of AI competition probably within that market, and so it's still very new. I don't think many people are going to hear this podcast right now, so it'll be a year.
I don't think the idea matters, honestly. Your idea is kind of garbage. The ideas are garbage in general. Operationalizing it makes sense. So distribution, like you talk about sales, getting it into people's hands. So just because this is a great product, pricing. Does it make sense? Are people going to use this? You actually have to implement and make a change in some of these organizations. So if somebody hears this idea and they go out and crush it better than your brother-in-law, I'm sorry, but like they were always going to crush it better than your brother-in-law. And they probably already had the idea. I don't know. I'm not saying, I hope that he wins. It's just, I really believe
I'm in the Steve
Jobs camp.
Come whoop your...
Good. I hope he goes and crushes it. I'm in the Steve Jobs camp that like your ideas, there's no market for startup ideas. And that's because, people are what you reveal to people and you're like, oh, I got to have them sign an NDA. I am firmly in the camp of your idea might be good and people come up with ideas. Can you actually make it reality? Can you build the thing that AI is making the barrier to that really low to at least have an entry kind of like, can I show you this thing? But then you get to the level of, okay, I need to get people to buy this. And that's where distribution matters. And then post-sales enablement and kind of support, and the differentiator is going to be how do your customers feel at the end of the day that you're taking care of them, not just this plug and play bot that doesn't really meet their needs. And that's why a lot of companies are doing this forward deployed engineer thing. I mean, that's a Palantir calling card. They did it in part because they were working with the US military and they needed a faster deployment cycle and kind of to get closer to the operator. And so they went out there, and what they were essentially doing is building a product for themselves, which is why it's super powerful, because the user wasn't saying, oh, this feature doesn't work. They actually had their engineers out there saying, here are all the things that need to be changed. And they're working with the
boots on the ground, right? Face to face. Yeah.
That's right. And so a lot of companies are trying to adopt this idea to get closer to the user, to customize a solution. So you're actually not leaving the outcomes in your customer's hands.
Right. Exactly.
It's pretty smart. I don't think that everyone has a fully, it's kind of like how product management became a big thing. I was listening to Lenny's podcast, and there's a couple people on there. I forget the guy's name, but he's like, people use that product manager thing way too loosely. He's got a tight definition that product is outcomes. So it's like, if you're not getting the outcome that they want, then you're not actually delivering the value. And so that's what the product needs to focus on. I think forward deployed engineers is very similar in that people are kind of overusing that because it's this, sexy new thing, and you're trying to put people with users, but how you run your business to actually leverage those FDEs, I think, is the differentiator at the end of the day.
I agree. I agree with your blanket statement of like forward deployed engineers, boots on the ground is the way to do it. And how you do that is super important, and the information they're bringing in, because that's essentially, because I'll bring it back to fly bodies a little bit. I was a true believer that, hey, we need to get closer to the actual customer when it comes to faculty and staff and understand them better so that we can provide services and products that actually help them on a day-to-day basis. Not just like, because I thought there was a white space in the area of like gyms are nice, but we're not really and insurance companies offer certain benefits and things to faculty and staff members at schools, but there was such a gap between what teachers need and faculty and staff members. So that's why it's my dream to be able to put like an actual trainer at schools eventually. Obviously, we built a product that allows us to track things via our FlyFit app, but to have somebody boots on the ground that actually can talk and interface with faculty and staff members, I think that's super huge. And so we can use that information to build a better product. I think that's kind of similar to what Palantir's trying to do. And that's what I kind of got it from them a little bit, because when they were saying, hey, we're working directly with soldiers because we want to know exactly what they want. We don't want to be guessing what they want. And then here, maybe 6 weeks later, after they get back from a deployment and they said, hey, this was really bad, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, we need to be there now. Anyways, very cool. All right. So moving on to the next topic, we've actually jumped into a bunch of different topics, but I thought this was kind of a funny one. Does your wife use AI at all?
She does. Yeah.
How does she use it?
So one, she started using it like browser on her phone using ChatGPT, and in recent months I convinced her to start using Claude because I think that Claude was performing better. What do you think the big
difference is between Claude and ChatGPT? Like, what is your main difference? Just to kind of hold on that point a little bit.
Okay, so it was around the time that OpenAI announced that they were going to start releasing ads.
Okay.
Inside their interface. And now if you look at other internet platforms, what is driving ad revenue is clicks, screen time, usage. That's not necessarily utility. And so I don't know if this is just my own bias, I think that this bias, I think that this is bad. I just got the sense that ChatGPT was kind of in the business of wanting me to use it more, not necessarily wanting me to get like good answers. Like if I go use the thing and then leave, I did my job. I got the outcome that I wanted. Right. And, Anthropic, through Claude being a subscription, which I know that I think ChatGPT has a subscription.
They also have a subscription. Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
They do.
And then they also have some free tier version of it. I think that the monetization for Claude is more aligned with getting things done. And so I convinced Molly to go over to Claude, and I think she's got the app now. She's not using the bar for downloading an app is high apparently, but in the past couple months and recently, Molly was like, we have a daughter, and our daughter was not sleeping well, and so she just kind of like went back and forth, hey, here's what's going on. Let's talk about the situation here. What are some recommendations on kind of like what we could do differently? It was actually super helpful for like brainstorming, because most of what parenting is just trying new things. So it's like, this didn't work. And if you are sleep deprived, or you are frustrated, or you are just, I don't know, I'm a human, and like I reach the end of my rope sometimes, and I'm just like, I don't even know what I would try next. Having a thought partner that can kind of, look at best practices or just recommendation. So she's using it for advice on a lot of things. And
that's so cool.
Yeah. So she'll do that independently on her own. Like, we don't talk about it, and she'll kind of like have hey, I think, Claude was saying this, that, and the other. And I'm like, oh, that sounds good. I'll be willing to try it. And if it works, it works. Back in the day when our daughter was born in 2023, she was not using AI at the time. And, we were just asking each other, we've gotten 4 hours of sleep. And like, what do we try next? I don't know. And so you're just asking, wisdom of the crowd. You're asking the people that are close to you. You're reading books. And so I think it's just like a nice partner in like a thought partner.
For sure.
Used a lot.
Interesting. That is, well, it's funny because what I heard was there was a problem, and your wife, Molly, was like, you know what? I think this could potentially help me solve this problem, because I know Garrett is helpful, but he doesn't know everything about babies. And I've maybe heard, I'd be curious to hear from if she heard anybody else, any other parents or anything using it. And then she was like, you know what, let me give it a try.
I actually don't know the origin story, but I was like showing her some of its capabilities. And I think she got intrigued as to how this is interesting how it responds back. Now, I think that's part of the problem is the judgment and taste. Like you shouldn't outsource the decision making or the thinking or the critical kind of decision making steps like that. You have to
there's a cutoff somewhere. Yeah.
And it's hard to know if you've prompted it well and if it's going to provide the right information. Is it using tools to go search the internet? Do you even trust the sources? Most of the stuff that's on the internet is noise, especially when it comes to anything.
For sure.
Parenting, you don't know if that aligns with your judgment values, but you can get kind of a good read. As long as you're not just taking it at face value, but kind of thinking critically after it, it's a great use case.
Agreed.
I don't know. What about your wife?
Dude, she has like, so in the beginning, I was using it a lot just for fly bodies back in 2023, same thing. And then very recently, I would say in the past like year or two, she is a researcher to the max when it comes to just like trying to get the best deal for things. And then also trying to understand what the best approach is to do things. And so she is very extreme when it comes to she wants to know the best decision possible. And so I'm more like, hey, if it's 80 or 90% effective, let's rock, right? She's like, I need 99.9% effectivity here or from the best deal. And so actually recently she used it to try to get, to negotiate to get a better deal for her car that she was getting. So dude, she'll use it for everything. And it's funny because, she'll ask me questions sometimes, but I know I'll see her on Claude just talking back and forth, and she is on Claude more than I am probably. So I find it kind of interesting because obviously she uses it very, very heavily. And in the beginning, she was like, why are you using that? Like, and it was funny because I thought this funny story was, she was like, you better not use Claude to do our vowels. And
you gotta write those yourself.
But it, like, for me, I'm not a great writer. I will be honest, I did not use Claude, promise. I have pictures of it. I have a picture of my scribbly handwriting on my piece of paper that I use to read my vowels. But going into that, it was interesting because I was like, oh, like it definitely took a lot more deep meaning thought to come up with my vowels. And I felt like I created something that was very genuine from me and my heart. And it was like, oh, like, I don't think there's no way Claude could have created that because it had so many experiences and like emotion in it. Yeah. So I thought that was cool.
No, I think even if you could download your brain, I mean, that's like the dream of the future, right? It's like if it had full context, would it write better vowels or like, but then it's like, does that even matter at the end of the day? Yeah. It's kind of like, I've seen some things online where, not wedding vows. I'm so glad that you didn't write your wedding vows with Claude. People are receiving, this AI outreach, or they see AI comments on LinkedIn and they're like, what are you doing? You're kind of burning your social capital there. Mm-hmm. There's judgment in how you use it, but there's judgment should you even use this at all. And I think that's like, you did a good job at establishing your humanness in that moment and not farming it out. And the effort, I think, matters at the end of the day. It's kind of a gift, labor of love in that way.
Yeah. And is there anything on your side that you don't use AI for? Like you really try to say, this is something I'm going to try to do. I know you talked about writing and trying to do that more, but anything else?
Yeah. So what I realize is that my ability to think critically, learn, and write fell off a cliff. So at HBS, our main method for learning is the case method. So you read a business case, which is, a document, 4 to 15, maybe even 20 pages on some company, some industry, some moment in time. And usually there's a protagonist that says, what should this person do? And they have discussion questions. Now, as I've described this to you, Claude just eats that up. It's like, great, I can do that. Boom, let me take this. I load it into Notebook LM, which is a Google thing, and it creates a podcast about the document. So I was just outsourcing all of this prep. So a couple things are wrong with that, in that effort actually contributes to learning and retention. So that's something that I realized, that the effort that I put in, I was remembering fewer details, it wasn't sticking as much, and in order for me to get the benefit of the case method, it's, have I really wrestled with this idea and know this exact case is not going to apply in the future, but the shape of it might, or it might remind me of, there was this thing that we talked about, there's this concept, and here's how I might think about it. And writing, so writing things and kind of shipping them in, it short-circuited the effort required to actually accomplish things. And I found that so there's two things. One, if you do the prep by just loading in the case and the discussion questions, you and 45 other people or more are going to have the exact same talking points, and
Okay.
you know it because you're sitting there with the printout from ChatGPT, like, oh, can't say that, cross that out, can't say that. It's like, oh, now the stuff that you were planning to say is quickly disappearing.
Taking over, yeah.
And then learning wise, reading something and saying, oh, that's what this means, or that's what this concept is. That is actually not how learning is done, is just facing the material one time and a complete solution. The effort to sit there and think, what is the right answer? Now, luckily, Claude has like a learn mode. There's a skill that you can use that does a better job at not just presenting information right away. It asks you some questions. It says, hey, explain this to me, and I'll give you kind of a grade on what this says, and then I'll see where your shortcomings are. So I've really reeled back the stuff that is critical for, there's a lot of effort involved. Now, where I want to outsource the effort, it's like this research stuff that your wife is using. Mm-hmm. It's fantastic at saying, hey, go scour the internet, go compile these things, make me a list. What are the best practices on these things? It does a really good job at compiling information, sequencing things, because it's a next word generator, so lists and orders of operations for how you might accomplish something. But I lost it there a little bit. The thing that is interesting about that is if you say, like, go figure out what the best way to do blank is. Like, go put, teachers in schools or whatnot, and you're having it scour the internet, whatever it was trained on, you're using the most advanced tools. By nature, it is limited by what it has seen.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it doesn't mean it can't create net new information, or it doesn't mean that it can't abstract or combine things in different ways, because that is sometimes useful information. I think that if you're trying to do something new, you need to lead the way with your critical thinking on like what should happen. And that's a part of the thing that I might be stepping into the realm of misstepping in terms of its capabilities. It's not capable of really doing the novel thing. Now, there might be something new that, it's doing, math proofs that haven't ever been done before, right? So there's new ground that it has uncovered, and it's discovering drugs and all these things.
Definitely does that, yeah.
That doesn't mean that it's like, okay, so if you're trying to get it to give you something new, why are you trying to ask it to give you something new if it's going to give you the average? The average is most likely next word on a sequence of things. It's going to give you basically, like what with the HBS case example, the same thing for most everybody.
Over and over again for most people.
Over and over again. Now, I mean, there's that's a vast oversimplification of kind of what it does and what it provides to you. It's just, I think that it's less good at breaking new ground in terms of just
sometimes
thought.
like protein folding. Yeah, thought.
But the thing is, protein folding is more like, you need to do this, and you need to do this billions of times, and it's gonna like programmatically
come up with it. Right. So you're saying like critical thought of like thinking through something and come up with new ideas.
What should Austin do in blank case?
Yeah.
It's gonna give you basically the recommendation, the average, and it's like,
what has happened in the past?
That has happened in the past.
Yes.
It was been
and so
trained
it's not going
on.
to take a new, like, hey, you've seen all these things and you have a vision and you could go this different route to make a paradigm shift.
Now you might be able to use it creatively, like you say, hey, what hasn't been tried, or like what are the things that aren't tried, and then you could use it. But the thing is, you still have to make the choice of what's the next best thing.
Exactly.
Right. So I really am in the camp of, if you're trying to do something brand new, or even beyond the limits of current science or technology, it's not unhelpful. It's just not going to spit out, here's the thing that you should do.
Right.
That's this brand new thing.
And I think, to your point, like it's always good to take a step back and say, hey, this is a tool, right? This isn't like, I could be wrong. I don't know if you've seen the movie the show Silo on HBO or something, or it might be Apple. It's interesting. I don't, spoiler alert. I think an AI is basically telling these people how to live in a future world in like 300, 400 years. And so the AI is basically telling people how to live and how they should run this community in this silo. And there's hundreds of different silos and stuff like that. And I heard this last episode where it's like 300 years ago, we had this same thing happen, and this is what we did to combat that. 150 years ago, this happened, and blah, blah, blah. So to your point, and then also you're like, should we really trust this AI in this moment? Because this is a little different than those times, right? And it's just like, to your point, you have to think critically about the moments you have and the steps you want to take using the data. But I always want to take a step back and say, AI is a tool. We need to use this as a tool, whether it's scraping data from the internet to get contacts from, schools to be able to call them, or helping us, come up with, hey, what's the average case study? And then how can I look at that and maybe do something a little differently, right? I look at it as a tool and not something that's going to completely replace us totally, right? Obviously, that's what I kind of want to get through all this is like, you get the doom and gloom of like, Elon will say, AI could kill us all. And it's like, yeah, but probably not. And then people go, and then I heard, I'm going to tell you this one short story about when I was in my annual tour. This is what I just remembered this. I had a lieutenant colonel who we were having like a little lunch with everybody. And there was this captain. I'm a major now. I was a major. I know. Just dust off the shoulder. There was this captain sitting beside him and then these lieutenants around the table. And we were talking about AI, and the lieutenant colonel was literally like, guys, you don't need to worry about AI. It's not going to take your jobs and blah, blah, blah. And then the captain was like, well, AI is pretty darn good and it does all these things. And so it was interesting because his viewpoint was like, guys, don't worry about it. And his viewpoint was like, dude, this is going to do really good things. And I think there's a middle ground, right? There's somewhere in the middle where you should be interested in understanding how this is going to affect your life, but you shouldn't just poo-poo it, because I think he was poo-pooing it. And I was like, you shouldn't go down that route, but you also shouldn't be in the route of, this is dangerous. This is something we should be worried about. It should be like worried about in a scared sense. We should be saying, how can we use this to the best of our ability?
Yeah. No, there's definitely a lot of, like I mentioned, kind of like the marketing that goes around some of these things and how much people understand them. And then these frontier labs that are saying, it's going to take all your jobs. It's going to take all your jobs. It's going to take all your jobs. They're the ones that are saying this. And then there's all these companies that are trying to use their employees to train their job away. Mm-hmm. I think it's probably closer to jobs will change. And the stuff that these models are really good at, they're going to just eat up. Now, the stuff that they're not good at, they're going to start to, inch towards in terms of being better. There's going to be steps towards those things improving. And then there's also going to be places for humans to operate. I would say the future is really bright. I'm not a doom and gloom guy. I would say that my one caveat is the way that these models are currently trained with the human learning reinforcement method, HLRF or HRLF. You have humans that are deciding, what to value and what is a good answer, what's not a good answer. And so you have essentially companies that are deciding kind of how these things operate. And that's a lot of what the beef behind the Elon Sam Altman thing is. Elon started OpenAI because he had conversations with other people in the tech world, and these people are all kind of, not all, the people he encountered were like post-humanists, they're transhumanists, basically saying, hey, the AI will, it'll take over us, and then the humans will just disappear. And Elon's like, I believe in a human future. I'm not going to let you guys just design the thing that's going to eat the world and kill humans. Mm-hmm. Now, is that still the future trajectory? I think that there are individuals in tech in these big frontier model companies that I don't know if I trust their kind of like judgment or their view of the world in the way that they would take things. And that's where a lot of people are pushing towards, more open source models and trying to have things that are at least it's not this technocratic, future. You see all these sci-fi movies where it's like there's three companies that run the world, and it's like actually that might be the future here.
Right, yeah, exactly.
And I hope that they're using good judgment. And so I think at the end of the day, the humans that are making these decisions about how these technologies will develop, so policymakers, individuals, how they use the tools, that's really going to determine the fate, which is a little wild. I don't know where it's going to go. But the humans that ultimately are making decisions about where these things go are super critical for how it's going to develop in the future.
And so the marketing kill shot, I came up with the marketing kill shot because this is from an MIT economist. He's in charge of like the economy division or economics division in MIT. And I heard him doing an interview, and the question was like, what's our economy going to be like, 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now? Are we going to be going the crapper or what? And he wrote his answer on a whiteboard and turned it to her, and it said, it's up to us. And so I love that tagline because it's the same thing with AI, same thing with just about anything. It's like, it's going to ultimately be up to us how we use this and how we go forward. So I love it's up to us, at the end of the day. And so to your point, I love the thing of like, hey, the people in charge of these companies are going to make what their product is for the good of us or for the bad of us eventually, blah, blah, blah. The last thing I'll say, and we can probably wrap up here in a second, is I thought it was interesting how you said originally how you guys quizzed the comp sci students that you had to really understand if they knew the material, like had an interview type of testing almost, and be like, hey, do you really understand this? And then what you just said about the case method of effort contributes to learning and retention, it's the same type of thing where if you just use, like if you were in the academy and you just used Claude to write your code and just said, here you go, and then you had an interview about it, you wouldn't know how to understand it. But if you helped it to write your code, but then you kind of like went by line and said, okay, this is why I did this, is why I did this, to understand it. Same thing with the case study. It kind of is one layer up where you have to read the case study and understand it in order to be able to proficiently say, like, this is what it's about, instead of just putting it in Notebook LM and saying, it can come up with a good answer, and I'm just going to turn this in because I need to get it done, right? So I thought that was kind of interesting of like your students, then you to the same situation.
Yeah, and I think in the future, effort and willingness to suffer through discomfort of the ability to write well, the ability to think critically is going to be a competitive advantage. Because if most people, the way that these tools have been used is outsourcing, critical thinking or outsourcing judgment. If people continue to do that, then my choice is a competitive advantage to be willing to deal with discomfort. And I hope other people continue to do it, continue to lean into the effort side of things and use it as a tool rather than as a replacement.
Agreed. And then the last thing, kind of finish on this, I think, I don't know, is there anything in the future that you're super excited about AI? Any product, any future, the world, or anything? I have mine, so I'll let you go first.
Yeah, so there's one that I've seen recently. It's called Town, TOWN. It's a company that they created these like agents that are for your personal life that is just going to learn your context over time, and the interface is really slick. And so a lot of people are raving about it. I haven't used it personally, but I've seen kind of a demo of it, and I think it's really cool because what it does is you don't need to learn Claude Code or any of the deep underlying stuff to get the benefit of having, that digital executive assistant in your life to be able to kind of learn and all your context to help you run your life more efficiently to get into the space of higher value activities. I don't know. What about for you?
That's cool. I think I'm going to check out Town after we get off the pod here, but I'm very interested in what OpenAI comes out with their physical product about
if they're allowed to.
If they're allowed to, because Johnny Ives, it's Johnny Ives, right?
Yeah.
They're apparently getting sued potentially by Google.
Dude, you go read the news. There are receipts. There are receipts of this guy like stealing information.
Gosh, well, I guess I'm not excited anymore. Gosh, I was just excited because I was like, oh man, I want to see like a physical AI product, right? Like, they say, I mean, obviously like Alexa and all these things are kind of like physical AI products, and even our phones. Like I was just, when they talked about a physical AI product, I was like, ooh, and Johnny Ives is making it. Like, is it going to be in your ear? Is it going to be a necklace? Is it going to be glasses? And there's a bunch of different products coming on. Anyways,
I'm excited for that.
I don't know if we'll ever see it.
We'll ever see that.
Yeah, but that's why I was like, man, I heard about this like 6 months ago, maybe longer, 8 months ago. But anyways, it's an interesting world right now. It's a lot of good competition. Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini. There's so many cool platforms. I'm wondering also who's going to win out in the end, because like I would say Facebook won out in the end, right? Like there was Friendster, there's Snapchat, there's Instagram. They bought Instagram. So I'm wondering in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, which platform is going to like win out? Do you have a prediction?
I think that they are not going to be the winners. Google is going to win. Google's going to win because they are actually have revenue from other sources, like their ad revenue and the interface that you think about adoption, getting people to adopt Gemini through Google search. And like they can basically burn a ton of money in developing these highly advanced models, but they don't rely upon it for their company to survive. I think that the frontier lab models, so if you think about like infrastructure, like, the overall infrastructure that's like energy and all these other things, and then chips, and then it's like the people who do like the compute, like the hyperscalers. Then you have the frontier model layer, and then you have the app layer on top of that. Bonuses or being able to control AI is still valuable, so it's not zero. So you still have to figure out like, hey, how do I make this actually produce an outcome? The middle layer is actually the most risk, and that's where they're trying to branch out, because they're trying to go from where they're at, which is just developing these models and burning a bunch of money into like, hey, how do I actually turn this into revenue and like eat into this app layer, and even like go down into the kind of like the compute layer in general. So
that's cool. I think that's a good prediction. Obviously, Google's a behemoth, and they have proven that they can create great revenue models and build a lot of wealth and build a lot of things. I think Claude, from an enterprise standpoint, they are really sinking their hooks into the enterprise world and getting developers to really use their product. And so to yourself, you love using Claude. I think a lot of developers really love using Claude.
Yeah, but I think that the future is model agnostic.
Okay.
I mean, people are not going to strap themselves. No business, I think, is going to want to be like, what I saw my last summer at a startup where we're using a model to do AI-based mental performance coaching, is we were using ChatGPT. I can't remember which model it was. And then they updated what models they had available, and they sunset the model that we were using. And so overnight we were like, oh, we have to like figure out how to, get the same performance out of a chat interface overnight. And that's just like not good business practice. So I think that most people are going to move to model agnostic, so that you have the ability to switch between the different models. And then that's where they're going to be competing against each other. That's why I think that like, Anthropic and OpenAI and whoever comes out, and then even just like open source is going to be like, oh, I have the ability to just be like, I'm not going to pay for that. We're just going to host our own model. So I don't think that like they're going to have to move. I'm not saying that those companies are going to die. I'm just saying that in their current version, this is why you see Anthropic branching out into Cloud Code and Cloud Design and these other things, because they know that they can't survive there for long.
I hear you, dude. I love it. No, this is a good pod. Hopefully we gave some practical things about AI, and obviously we're not AI wizards, but we're using it day to day in our normal lives, and just trying to make it in this world. So that's all I got. I think that's a pod.